friends. In the previous chapter, we learnt about nutrition. We learnt that food is taken into our body and then it is digested in the digestive system. From there, it is transported by the blood. The digested food is transported by blood to every cell of our body. We have learnt that food is taken in to provide energy. But do you think just because the blood has supplied food to every cell of our body, we get energy? No, my dear friends, it does not happen that way. The food in the cell has to be broken down, or it has to be oxidized in the presence of oxygen. Only then the energy is released. And this happens due to a process known as respiration. So this is Veena and you are watching Veena's EduGrid. So let us learn about the next life process, that is respiration. Respiration, because due to this process energy is released. This process is also known as the energy supplying system. Now, how is the energy produced? We have many events. The events, let us learn about the events or steps of respiration. The first event is breathing. When we breathe, we take in oxygen and we inhale oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. Then the second step is the gaseous exchange at the lungs level. Here what happens is, what oxygen is taken inside the lungs, that is exchanged between the blood and the lungs. In the lungs we have alveoli and here the exchange of gases take place. The third event is gas transport by the blood. The blood from the lungs, it carries the oxygen and it transports it to every cell of our body. The fourth event is gaseous exchange at tissue level. The blood which has taken the oxygen, it supplies it to the tissues, and from the tissues the carbon dioxide is again taken by the blood and again it comes back to the lungs. So this process takes place at the tissue level. The fifth event, the fifth step is cellular respiration. Once the blood has supplied oxygen to the cell, then the cells they take up this oxygen and here the cellular respiration is taking place. That is, the food is oxidized, the food is broken down and then energy is released into our body, with which we do all the activities. Like I am speaking to you, I am standing, I am sitting, running, whatever we do, for that we require energy, and this energy is released only when cellular respiration takes place. But before we learn about all these steps, let us learn about the pathway of air. The pathway of air in our body takes place through the system known as respiratory system. And this respiratory system has the nostrils. We take in air through our nostrils. Begins from our nostrils and this leads into a passage known as nasal cavity. Now this nasal cavity again, it leads into a long tube-like structure known as the trachea. And before the trachea there is a place known as pharynx. This is a common passage. You can see from here there is another tube coming from the mouth and then this is from the nose. So both of them meet together at the place known as pharynx. And below in the pharynx itself you have a flap-like structure known as epiglottis. Now epiglottis again leads into a larynx, that is, it is known as the voice box, or you can also call it as the vocal cord. Now trachea leads into two bronchi, two branches. It divides into two branches and these two branches are known as bronchi, and these two bronchi, they go into two lungs, both the lungs, and here they divide into again finer branches, and these finer branches again they are supplied with air-like structures. They form grape-like structures, bunch of air sacs, and these air sacs are known as alveoli. So these are the parts of our respiratory system. Now let us learn how each and every part functions and what is the function of every part. When air enters into our nostrils, air passes into the nasal cavity. Here in our nostrils we have some hair-like structures. These hair-like structures, they trap the dust particles or any foreign particles, they trap them, and this nasal cavity is lined by mucus lining. So any tiny particles or dust particles or foreign particles is trapped by the mucus lining and by the hairs, and that is how the fresh air is passed into our nasal passage. And the other function of the nasal cavity is it makes whatever type of air it is, that is whether sometimes we take in warm air, sometimes we take in cool air, and according to the environment, according to the climate. But when the air passes into the nasal cavity, it again gets converted to our body temperature. So this also is a function of nasal passage. Now then, when the air enters into this pharynx, here we have a flap-like structure known as epiglottis. This epiglottis is a flap-like structure which will allow the food to pass into the food pipe, and it will allow the air to pass into the trachea. When we come down, we have larynx. It is the voice box, and we have the vocal cords here. When air passes through the trachea, from the lungs it passes through the trachea or over the vocal cords, and there is vibration produced, and due to these vibrations we produce sound. That is how we are able to speak, we are able to sing, and we are able to do all this just because of this voice box that is known as larynx. Now when we come down to the trachea is, you can see ring-like structures here. When you touch your neck here, you can find this tube. This is the trachea. This is lined by ring-like cartilaginous rings. These rings are made up of cartilage, because these cartilaginous rings, they protect our trachea from any damage. So if anybody gives you a punch, your trachea can damage. So that is why it is lined by tracheal rings, so that your windpipe is protected. Then as it goes down, the trachea divides into two branches. These are known as the bronchi. Now bronchi leads into two lungs. We have two lungs well situated in our thoracic cavity, or it is also known as the chest cavity, on the left side and on the right side. The left side of the lung has two lobes, and the right side of the lung has three lobes. And the lungs are spongy in nature, and they have no muscles, and they are filled. They have a vacuum inside. So when we breathe in air, then the air inflates. The lungs inflate by taking in air, and when we exhale out, then the lungs collapse. So the two lungs, they are actually, when we are born, they are a pink in color, but as we are taking in the impure air or the dirty air, whatever is there we are breathing, as we grow up, the lungs no longer remain pink. They start changing the color. Okay. Now when the bronchi reaches the lungs, they divide into a number of branches. It looks like as if it is an inverted tree. The trunk is on the top and so many branches below. So as if it is an inverted tree, it looks like that. And every branch is supplied by air sacs, and these air sacs are known as alveoli. There are millions of alveoli present in the lungs. And it is said that if you cut open our lungs and we spread the alveoli, it will cover half of the tennis court. So many millions of alveoli are present in our lungs. And when we breathe in air, the air goes into the alveoli, and this alveoli has blood vessels. Blood capillaries are flowing over this alveoli, and these blood capillaries, they take the oxygen from the alveoli, and carbon dioxide from the blood goes into the alveoli. So the exchange of gases takes place in the alveoli. Now our lungs are very well, it consists of two membranes, and those two membranes are known as pleura, and there is a cavity which is filled between the two membranes. This will protect our lungs from any shock or any injury. So this is how our lungs are very well protected. So now we have learnt about the respiratory system, the parts of the respiratory system, and how what is the function of each and every part of our respiratory system. Next we shall learn further, very deeply we shall go into the respiration, the breathing process and everything. Until then, keep watching and keep learning, and thank you friends.